welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm host Sarah Stock, and I'm so excited that you are here. And to all of our guests who are showing up, all of our audience, I'm just so excited about our guest, Herlay Divine. But for our audience that's here live, thank you for being live. There's such an incredible piece about being able to do something live and have you be here when it's happening. And then also for anyone who's watching later on, we are so excited that you are taking the time to stop in and listen and to gain tools working on. I was in a meeting this week, and I just want to share this with you. As I was talking to the top executives, that they were sharing how incredibly powerful the message is that's getting out about Simply Sarah, about Achieve TV, about things that are changing people's lives and helping those lives become better. That's what this is all about. This is why we are investing our time. And so as I bring in my dear friend, Herlay Divine, you are going to just be so blessed. You're going to learn so much from her. I just encourage you just to sit back and listen all the way through to what she's going to be sharing with us. Herlay, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. It's such a dream come true. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited.
Yes, and you were just doing a huge thing this last weekend in San Pedro that you were up on stage and sharing and changing lives, and you have been so incredibly busy. You have a new book out. We just have so much to cover. But before we get there, I would love for you to share a little bit about your background, because you're in Southern California now, but this is not where you were born and raised, and would just love for you to share whatever part of your story that you would like to as we get ready to share about tools that will help people in their lives.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I'm just excited at what you're doing with Simply Sarah and Achieve TV. It's just so amazing to have this platform be out and about in people's lives, just moving and I want to say grooving in people's lives, because I believe that when we can have joy, right, in within change, that in itself continues to perpetuate that what it is that we want, even more so. And so I'm just so excited that you get to that Papa blesses and will continue to bless this movement, because it's moving in people's lives so beautifully, and it's creating more joy. And the scripture tells us that joy is our strength. It's medicine to our souls. And so with that, I'll go into absolutely, yes. So my name is Herlay Divine. I was born Herlay Paul, and I experienced a shift. I want to say about 6 years ago, I had a major shift that happened in my life. And as a little girl, I remember thinking, all I want to experience is motherhood. Yes, I want career. Yes, I want, because, I grew up Caribbean, so I'm of Haitian descent. And so we're taught, like, you go to school, you have a successful career, you get married, you have beautiful children, you have a home, right? Like, the American dream. And about 6 years ago, as I started experiencing this shift, God said, I'm making you new. And so with that, you have to have a new name. And I said, God, what does that even mean? And he says, I'm changing your heart. I'm shifting your heart. I'm catapulting you to the next glory. You're in your present glory, but I believe that there's more for you. And at the time, it was Divine Lay. I remember him inspiring me to create like a brand and to write poetry, and it was Divine Lay. And then more so, as I started really studying what it was to transform, he started telling me, no, you can't leave out, her lay, right? Lay does mean light, but you can't, it's the fullness of that's what I named you. I named you her lay, and now I'm naming you divine. And so you need to really step into that. And I would say I didn't feel comfortable initially stepping into that divine nature, because I just felt like I didn't know what that meant, right? And so as I started really uncovering, and God was just really, He had begun to speak to me as to what it looked like to shift, and what that transformation would look like. I began to have dreams about who I already was, and He said, "All I need you to do is step into that, but you need wisdom, you need knowledge, you need to become in order so that you can have." And so I would say so the major shift that happened was my divorce, actually. And after that, it literally catapulted me into the journey of becoming, right? Becoming who I know now as Herlay Divine. So the name it finally became official. And you can look me up as Herlay Divine now. And it's something that I'm still coming into. It's a name that obviously is profound in it of itself, but I'm stepping into the shoes that God has personally handcrafted for me as Herlay Divine.
Really, that is so beautiful. And I love that you talk about this transformation, this shift, that
Yeah,
you were going one direction, you had been taught, and you were being obedient to that direction.
yeah,
And in conversations with spirit, with the one I call Papa, being able to come into a different place of being able to say, I support what I have been taught. I
hmm,
understand the goodness of it. And yet the calling on my life is different
yeah,
than perhaps for my siblings or for my
right,
community. And to be
yeah,
able to come into that place and open your heart. And I think at times it can feel very, very alone because
yeah,
you're stepping into a different place than what everybody else would be expecting you to do.
yeah,
Then in that aloneness, it seems like that, I don't mean you to be putting words in your mouth, but that the word alone just has been showing up for me about
hmm,
the aloneness is where we have the quiet time in
yeah,
order to be able to start listening in and maybe uncovering, maybe unburying, maybe uh, releasing. Maybe it's like
yeah,
monkey bars that we're letting go of
yeah,
one monkey bar and going to the next one,
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
inside of this transformation time,
Mhm.
what did you find to be tools, either in community or by yourself or you found to be helpful for you as you were going through this divorce, this releasing, this letting go?
Mm. Well, I want to speak to that aloneness. I think that initially, when you are being transformed, I think of the butterfly. Like there's moments of where it's complete darkness, right? Like I imagine that there's complete darkness, and I think that is necessary for the process. That darkness where you feel like you're completely alone. There might even be some anxiety. There might even be some fear as it relates to that. I think that aloneness is key, is what I found in my own evolution. I think that aloneness for me meant now that I can look back, um, and reflect, that aloneness meant that confirmed the transformation. Because I remember even as a kid feeling like, am I adopted? Because I just feel like I see things so differently than these people. Like, and I just remember thinking, oh man, I don't know if I belong here. And
Yes.
but that is all part of um, the God calling us out,
Mm.
right? Papa calling us out to be the individualized expression of Him. And so I just love that aloneness, and I purposely create that aloneness now, so that I never forget, the process that I went through, right? Like I
Mm.
never want to forget it because it allows me now to be firm and to settle into my own continued healing, and
Yes.
then now I have the absolute honor of being able to usher other women in that same journey. And so, so that's what I love about that aloneness. But to answer your question more directly, I think that the spiritual practices that I use to really propel myself forward was just really, it started with really just acknowledging that my own awakening had to be my priority. So it had to be like my number one thing that I said, okay, like I either sit here and go through like the ruminations of anger, of frustration, of, just if you could imagine all the different feelings, wanting to go to jail, like, just all the things like you experience, and and I'm just so grateful that God would just send me just beautiful souls to remind me like, hey, this is not this is a part of your story, not your whole story, right? Like, and the more I acknowledge that, the more it became my number one priority in this life to awaken who I believe I truly am as Herlay Divine. And in doing so, I was able to look into the darkness, and the more I did that, I was able to now decide every day to awaken more of the light, right? And so every time, so I used every moment of frustration, I used every moment of anger, of just like depravity, just everything that was negative. I used every single moment as a moment to awaken light. So I would say, Papa, I just need you to shine on this right now. I can't make a decision. I just need for you to show me that there's light right here. Like there's a response that I want to give, but I can't. Like I need for you to do this because I recognize that in the work that I do as a mental health clinician, I couldn't stop working. I needed to continue to work, right? I have two children. So I needed to have something that I can, like a bucket, so that I can just put it in there and say, Papa, do your thing with that, because I don't know what to do here. Um, so that was something that I did initially. And then once I started, spending more time in reflection, I met the Soul Journey Masterclass, and we're both students of the Soul Journey. And I used a lot of those tools and I just really love that allocated sacred space that, the Soul Journey talks about that we create. And then so now, that's what I continue to use. I use some of those tools. So for me, that looks like hypnosis. For me, that looks like meditation. For me, that looks like affirmation, reflection. And I still, when those negatives, I mean, it's been, 5 or 6 years since the divorce. So I still, to this day, use those same tools of just, Papa, you handle this. I don't have the words, like you handle this. So I still use that initial reaction of, I know what I'm feeling. I acknowledge it. I take it in. I even acknowledge um, my position in what's happening. But I cannot allow this position to keep me stuck. And I realize that pain is very much unconscious. And when we are unconscious, we welcome sin. And we know that sin is when we miss the mark of truth. So I had to admit to myself, okay, I feel this pain, but I cannot go unconscious right now. And so for me, having um, that mental or spiritual bucket where I just kind of put things in and I said, God, help me to deal with this, shine your light on it, right? Because in this moment, I don't have the words. In this moment, I don't have the tool. And sure enough, like once I started doing that more often, I found that I just became freer. I just became more present. I just began to see that no one and no thing was coming to me for the purpose of wanting to give me pain, right? Like it,
Right.
it all was happening for my greater awakening.
Yes.
And it's been such a beautiful journey.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you have beautiful children. Wow.
Thank you. They're such gifts. Yeah.
They are in this place of speaking about the alone time, about um, learning to have this other bucket. because people will say that we have three buckets in life. We have a family bucket, we have a spiritual bucket, we have a work bucket. And I do believe that we get to decide how the buckets are, how they're labeled. I
Mhm.
also believe that we decide how many buckets we have. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate you talking about creating this other one of, this is stuff that when I look across my life, I know that the energy that I have today, the fortitude that I have for today, because we are only given manna for the day. We're only given um,
Mhm.
the energy that we have for this particular time. We're not given
Mhm.
yesterday's energy that we didn't use. We're not given that in. We can't store it forward. And we
Mhm.
also can't take energy from tomorrow and push it into today. These are just, this is where we're living, and these are
Yeah.
part of the constructs of it, right? So, in this place, then finding what it is that those buckets are and be able to put things into that bucket to be able to say, this is something with what I have right now on my plate. I know that I can't deal with now. We're not saying we're avoiding, we're not saying ignoring. We are saying that we are allowing that. We're feeling the feelings, we're allowing that, but that we
Mhm.
don't need to get right in there and start fixing it or doing something with it. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate, Herlay, when you talk about the hard emotions that come up, to
Mhm.
just know that that's not light. That's not the way
Mhm.
to be dealing with it.
Mhm.
How you want to be remembering the situation if you do in 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't lie to you, Sarah. I mean, there are some events that have happened that I'm like, God, just block my mind. I don't even want to remember that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are those. There are several different ones, but um I can look back and say that I'm so grateful because each and every single emotion that I felt was mine, and it allowed me to see what was even in there, like I always saw myself as the person that didn't have the capacity to hate. Like I was like, I can't hate anybody. Like that's just not me, Like I grew up and I never got into any fights. Like, it wasn't like that was just my nature. So the fact that all these emotions were coming up, like I was so at the time they were uncomfortable. At the time I felt like an unraveling, right? Like I felt like um, but just all these different feelings. It just felt like I was in a web, and the more I acknowledged what was happening, it felt for me the freer I got because I was able to release some things that were happening like in my body as well, and so I completely um, take full responsibility. And I think in doing that, it allowed me to, kind of like move myself out of the web that I felt like I was stuck in, right? Because I think the biggest realization too was understanding that you might feel those things, but they are not you, right? Like the highest version of you is showing up to heal that, right? But that's not you. Like that's not who the you that is like real. That is, you know what I mean? And once I understood that that was like a version of, a story that I was creating, right? I just took myself out of the story, and said, okay, now I get a chance to create a new one. And I think that part was difficult because culturally being Caribbean, it's like you are, you're a single woman now, like, and so it's like, okay, how do you navigate that life without the man like covering you, and so I spent, the 5 years completely being single and and enjoying that instead of like jumping into another relationship, and I did have those feelings like that's what I'm going to do and that's what I want to do, but I only entertained it for months, I would say right after. And then Papa just started really speaking to me about, hey, like I'm really transforming you. You can't have these energies because you're still attached to who you once were or who you were once identifying as. So I really need you to hone in, and I'm so grateful that I did that because now I'm able to rectify. I'm not saying I don't still identify with certain feelings or emotions and I'm superhuman, but like, but I I can rectify those emotions a lot quicker and recognize, okay, like this is not in alignment with who I want to be in this moment. And I love how you talked about the manna. The manna is given for this specific time, moment, and space. And so it's like it, the minute we acknowledge that, I feel like what happens within us is transformational in and of itself, because now we're able to say, okay, I am complete in this moment. I lack nothing. And for me, affirmations are so key to bringing me back to my body, right? So
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We will be right back with more with Herlay right after this.
Yes.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Greg Russell. I'm the host of TechnologyTuesday.com. You can find us on the Conscious Business TV network every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the latest resources to help you make more money in your business. Join us on E360 TV. Come on.
Do you feel like you've been having to work hard to be healthy? I have felt like this too. My name is Christy Jones, and I'm a holistic health and mindfulness coach and educator. And I have found some efficient and simple ways that we can really help maintain our health, even in challenging times. We know we are in a time where our food is nutrient lacking. We're not always getting the nutrients that we need from our food. We also know we're in a time of more toxicity than we even want to think about. Yet there are still things that we can do that help us to support our health and well-being. One of the things that I recommend for my clients and I use for myself to achieve that is a product called ASEA. Now, what I love about ASEA, it gives our body exactly what it needs. Our body makes something called redox molecules. And redox molecules are our cell-to-cell communication. They help our cells to communicate, to know what to do in our body to achieve our optimal health. Now, when we do not have enough redox molecules in our body and our cells are not communicating, what do you think is going to happen? We may deal with some of the health challenges and the fatigue that many of us experience. However, when you have those molecules, you have enough redox molecules, you're setting yourself up for a foundation of health. So what is ASEA? ASEA provides our body with the exact redox molecules that many of us are lacking so that we can support our health and well-being.
We're having a fabulous conversation with Herlay Divine, and I'm just so excited that we have the opportunity to do this, that she could fit Simply Sarah into her incredibly busy schedule. She is highly gifted, very sought after in terms of a therapist, and in that process, then she speaks life into so many different people. Herlay, how did you get to this point of speaking life into other people's lives and being a counselor and doing all the different training, the different things that you've done? What was the calling in your life to do that?
Oh, I love this question, Sarah. So I from the time I was 5 and 6 years old, when people would ask me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I say, "I'm gonna sit people down and talk to them." Who
Love
says that? Who
you.
says and of course, I forgot about that dream, and so I went into nursing,
Ah,
and I remember the first semester in college thinking, I don't think this is what I'm supposed to do. And I didn't know what it was at the time, but I knew that at the age of 16 and 17, I had started feeling a call to um, for scripture, for God, for wanting to know more about where where I came from, and not like in the cultural sense, but like my divine nature, right? And I remember sharing this with friends and then being like, girl, we're going to this party. We're not thinking about what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, and so I remember being somewhat of an oddball for some time. But there, for some reason, I felt more of a call to do the things that I felt that God had put in me to do. Even though I had moments where I partied, I'm not going to say like, those things weren't, I was a monk or anything like that. But I, when I became self-resolved, I want to say by the time I was like 17, that this is talking to people and figuring out ways to encourage someone in their faith, to find hope. Um, that became uh, a focus for me. And in college, although I didn't know what that looked like, I went into social work. And after nursing didn't work out, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to take classes. And I just remember thinking, okay, like I'm really liking social work. And then for some reason, I took a class on communications and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I could see myself doing this. But I remember being so scared, Sarah. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is scary. The first class I actually didn't show up. Like I just like totally like skipped it and it was like, oh my God, like my nerves just, and I remember the next class, going to the teacher and saying, I purposely skipped your class because I was afraid. And she says, well, that's how I know you're going to get an A. And, I didn't skip a class after that. And she was right. I did get an A. And so I fell in love with communication. I fell in love with social work. And then once I moved to California, I realized that I needed more. And and at the time, I knew I didn't want to be a psychologist because or a psychiatrist. I knew that I wasn't interested in like the medication piece or just like research. So when I moved to California, I began just really thinking about like what it would look like to work, because I couldn't find work initially as a social worker. And it dawned on me, you should go back and get your master's. And as I was looking for an internship in my master's program, I literally fell into a private practice. And it was then that dream that I had at 5 and 6 years old, where I was sharing with people, I just want to talk to people. I was doing exactly that. And I didn't realize it up until that point. And so that was almost 15 years ago. That's crazy now. But it was some time ago, and I recognized that I just felt at home. I literally felt at home. And the more I spoke to people, and provided them. So at this point, it's clinical, so you're not necessarily speaking, faith into people, but I recognized that there was an energy about it where I still wanted to. I wanted to come from a strength-based approach. So I wanted to always find a strength. You can come and tell me like the world is falling apart, and the social work principles and ethics really aligned with mine, where it says, no, like, yes, it might be falling apart. We acknowledge that, but there's still a strength in there. There's still a strength in you. Where can we find it? And my goal became to help people find that. And so I just fell in love with that aspect. And then I started doing, then I became a life coach, a certified life coach, because I realized that, I needed to expand some in that area, where maybe a person didn't necessarily want to be diagnosed, right? They just wanted to come in and talk to someone and have that hope, and get that, get perspective without feeling like, they have to perhaps share it with their health insurance or have their name, be in some kind of system or whatever. And so that's why I went back for that aspect, because I decided that I wanted to be more of service, and I wanted to kind of open myself up to the possibility of talking to people within their comfort, their place of comfort. Yeah.
And inside of that, then, things have radically changed over the last 5 years in
Yeah.
terms of meeting in person or, meeting online. So as you are coaching,
Yeah.
is it important for you that people come one way or the other, or is it more important for you that in terms of that part of it?
So if I understand your question, are you referring to the online platform versus being in person?
Right.
Well, I prefer, but definitely being in person. But because things have shifted a lot, due to COVID and just more so availability. I try to meet people where they are, and so right now I'm exclusively taking clients through their journey using a virtual platform. But eventually that would be the goal, to get back in person, just because you get a chance to really see someone's complete body language, right? You can hug if that's appropriate. You can shake hands if that's appropriate. And so it's definitely something that I think is necessary for sure.
And I so love that you are meeting people where they are, but also by having
Yeah,
a hotline on the platform, Herlay, you're able to meet people truly across time zones, across
absolutely.
and have a wider impact, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that part is so awesome. So awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And do you work primarily with women who are going through hard things? Are you working with families? Are you working with children?
Mhm.
Where are the places, or is it that as Papa brings them to you and it's the right connection that you say, yes, we're going to work together? Or how
Yeah.
does that work for you?
Okay, so primarily at this time, I work with all populations. So I work with children, I work with families, I work with women, I work with men. Um, However, I think that what I noticed is starting to happen because of my book here.
Yes.
I noticed what's starting to happen is more women are coming and saying, "Hey, like I want to be in community with you."
Yes.
Because I do want to heal. And so that is expanding, and it's so amazing what Papa is doing there, because now I'm able to meet with women one on one. I'm able to meet with women in community and say, hey, like let's have some tea, and and not be the tea, right? Like we're not spreading tea.
Yes.
We're having tea that's going to open us up, and to where we can invite Papa in. We can get to that calm space to where we say, Papa, I just want you. I just want you to fill this void right now. And so that's what's been happening. It's such
Mm.
an honor and a privilege to be used in this way. Yeah.
Beautiful. I want you to tell us more about the book Herlay. I know that I
Yeah.
have an online copy of it, but you
Yeah.
have a beautiful printed copy as well. Tell us what that process was, who the book is primarily for, what's taking
Goodness.
place. Just tell us about the book.
Yeah, I can scream right now. Oh my goodness. So heart heal. As you
Mhm.
can see, it's not big at all. And I remember it criticizing God. I remember saying, how you why this is me talking to God, right? So I said, so it might sound a little, out of sorts, but I said, why you have me writing a book that's so small? And he said to me, he said, when you were going through your major the major pain, the avalanche that you felt like you were under, when you were experiencing that, did you feel like reading? Oof. And I said, I
Yeah.
said, no, I don't. No, I didn't. No, I don't. And I still don't. And he's like, that's why. That's why I want to put a word in you for another woman,
Yes.
because I've gotten you to the point where you are now a healing balm. And when I
Yes.
heard that, I said, oof. And he said, now you have a responsibility.
Yes.
Once I've healed you, you become a healing balm for other women. And so the process became It came through reluctance, as you can tell. It came through reluctance, but I said, okay, I will. And I said, I remember thinking the thought that says, okay, if you bring me through this, I will finish this book. So through this meant the avalanche that I felt like I was under, the pressure that I felt like I was under, the feelings of, can I ever figure out my life without having what I believed was the need for a covering, right?
Right.
Through the masculine sense, through having a husband. I said, if you help me through this, I will tell the story.
Mm.
And so it became about creating a devotional for
Mhm.
21 days with simple wording that would just
Yes.
where you can just look in the mirror. I mean, there's specific instruction, but you simply look in the mirror and you affirm to yourself. You tell yourself a different version of the story you're currently telling yourself, even though you might feel like your story is absolutely true. You know, we hear this often. The definition of insanity is repeating the same cycle and thinking that you're going to get a different result. And so when we're in pain, I said in the beginning, it you become unconscious. And the book came from a place I where God said, I'm tired of seeing you in the unconscious, right? And so now I get to usher my sisters or my brothers, whoever, whoever can benefit. I believe everyone who has read this, male or female, have given me just wonderful feedback. The unconscious is something that you have to literally pluck out. It's like a bad root, right? Like you have to pluck it out. It's the weed, and you have to allow, yourself to look at yourself and say to yourself, you deserve more than what you're currently giving to yourself. Because at the end of the day, if we take away the experience, it's just you.
Right.
It's you facing you. And so, oftentimes when we're going through this, these pains, what happens is we truly believe that it's somebody else that is causing us this pain.
Right.
Even though the person may not even be there with you physically, but in their mind, they're holding space. They're taking up, a whole lot of space in your mind and in your heart. And so what this book does is it helps you to take personal responsibility, to own your own energy, and
Yes.
to want and desire more for yourself.
That's just so beautifully put, Herlay. And I think one more thought about that is that other people I do think that there are some people who are very, um, they're not necessarily working on themselves, and they find it easier to create chaos so that other people are giving off energy, and then
Mhm.
that then feeds them for that. And what
Yeah.
I'm loving that you're talking about in our full conversation is personal responsibility, taking care of ourselves, allowing the alone time, allowing the conversations, allowing these different pieces to happen in such a way that as we feel these other pressures coming in, we can put them in a bucket. We can say, that's not for me to deal with. We can say, and we can literally say to the other person, thank you, I'm not going to dance in that dance. We can do that. But I think that just being able to really clearly come into where our own boundaries are, for where we feel safe, for where we feel that we can do the most benefit in terms of growing, but also we don't grow just for ourselves, just like you have shared out of really, really hard things in your life has come this beautiful book as a testimony, as a legacy, as a filling into other people, not just now, but for all eternity, for the full future,
Mhm. Yeah.
because the words will outlive you. And
Yeah.
so in that space then of being able to allow these things, the conversation internally of what really is mine, and then if it is mine, is it really true? The stories that we tell each other are vast and deep, and I thought I did a pretty good job of working through some of those. And this last week, I found myself having conversations with my stories, just saying, I appreciate you showing up as a story. I so appreciate you getting my attention, but let's have a conversation about this because I want to hear everything that you have to say
Yeah.
in this story. Tell me all of it. And I'm sitting
Yeah.
back a little bit as an observer, just kind of watching the landscape. And then at the end of this, how much of this is really true? How much of this really is my identity? How much of this really is the eternal part of me that's going to continue on, right? That's the eternal part. How much of that is involved in the story, if any of it?
Right.
That
Right.
is for me the magnifying glass or the glasses to be able to look in on something and say, 50 years from now, 5 years from now, in eternity, will this actually matter or not? That just gives me a space of perspective, a space of being able to allow the emotions to be there, to not put them away, but also then to be able to work with those emotions and say, really, what is this truly about? Because if it's truly, you're absolutely right. Relay that comes into that place of just insanity, of craziness. And it's not just during the daytime, it also then begins showing up in the dream, right? Time part of it as well. We have choices that we get to make about how deep we dance with these stories. And
Right.
the truth of just because somebody else comes along and says, this is how I see you, that's their perspective.
Yeah.
We get to look with different eyes. We get to look with a different vantage point because it's
Yeah.
our, and we've gotten to see it from the very beginning. We've been witnesses to it all the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you're saying, Sarah. It's so profound. It made me think of the notion or the philosophy that I began to kind of decide that that this was going to be a narrative that was going to happen in my mind. I found myself saying, even I think it became unconscious after a while, but I found myself saying, if it's showing up because there's a tool for me. There's a tool for me to be able to overcome it.
Yes.
So this negative feeling is coming up, like there must be a reason. And I started really seeing myself as like the image that I would have oftentimes. Oh, I can't believe I'm sharing this because it was something that was happening unconsciously. But I'm so grateful for these types of opportunities because it allows us to really just open up. And so the image that would come to mind oftentimes is of being a sculptor. And I would say and because I have this vision of who I am that God gave me as Herlay Divine. And so I would see that there, as different emotions were coming up, it was like, okay, so I want to sculpt this. I want to sculpt you, and this emotion, this feeling that's coming up doesn't fit, in this part of you, in this section of you, right? It doesn't. We can't. It can't. We can't smooth this part out.
Right.
And so, and the more I saw that, the more, I think it just became, like I said, really unconscious. But I think what I love about what you're saying is, understanding that the story is present for you
Yes.
and as you're present in it, it has a message for you as
Yes.
well. So I think that that's why I choose to welcome the good and the bad, right? Because I think that it's all presenting something. And if I just sit in it long enough, with the light turned on, right, I become, like you said, an observer. And within that observation, I'm able to, oftentimes, it may not be in the same sitting, but oftentimes extract the message, extract, and I do this. It takes and that's why I was single for all this time, because it takes a lot of dedication and reflection and being able to, sit in the tears and like everything that might come up, right? And but it's such a beautiful journey if you just allow. It reminds me of just like that exercise you do as a kid where you fall back and expect somebody to catch you. It's part of that allowing. So I love what you're saying.
As you were talking about sculpting, that's such an
Yeah.
incredible picture. And this is something I haven't thought of literally for years.
Yeah.
But the piece of marble that became Michelangelo's David, he wasn't the first person, the first artist to look at that slab of marble. There had been other tremendous artists who had looked at it and had just decided that that piece wasn't for them to work on. If we think about our community, there inside of our community, there are going to be things that other people are going to look at and say, it's not for me to work on. It's not mine, right? And yet when Michelangelo came up to this slab of marble, he was like, I see what needs to be removed in order to show what is actually inside of this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you are talking about this as this sculptor. I see these other parts being removed. These don't belong. This is not, that can be somebody else's story. And I think when people look at the statue of David, maybe some of them still see a slab of marble. But for those of us who have eyes, who understand that that was years in the making, all
Yeah.
the work that went into it, to be able to honor that and to see it, this many years later. And again, coming back to this allegory of people, watching people transform, watching them take off the part that is no longer them. And you talked earlier about the butterfly out of its cocoon. I remember the first time that I watched this with my second grade students, there was one that was really struggling. And I was like, oh, let me help it, let me help it. But the instructions had said in great big letters, do not help the butterfly, because if you do, it will never be able to fly. It has to go through this point of taking everything that's engorged inside of its body and pushing it out into the wings. It's a long, painful process from what I can see watching the butterflies. And then the wings have to dry before they can begin to fly. And so again, if we start circumventing this, going, oh, it's not that bad, or I really don't need to deal with this, I think that you're just so right, Herlay. All of the good and all of the things that you say are bad, or people may have other words for that, the difficult things, the pieces that feel like are just so tight around you, perhaps even feeling like they're strangulating your life that you're living, all of those things have tools or opportunities hidden inside of them for us to be able to decide if we're going to do something with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the message. That's the message that I think all, seeming issues of life bring to us. Oftentimes people wait till they get the diagnosis to work on the thing, right? And so this is preventative. We're wanting to do that ahead of time. We don't wait for the mess to make the message, right? Like we don't wait on that. Like we create the opportunity because we understand that we are it. And that's the part that I love so much about this work. And I'm choosing to call it work, but I don't believe it is. I think it's just more of the aligning. You just, like you said with the butterfly, you naturally, it just comes into itself. And when it comes, no one has to remind the butterfly of its beauty. It just knows, like, it's just in awe, right? Like, you admire me, like, so yeah, so that's the process of transformation that is so beautiful. And the thing that I love about transformation, the scripture says, is we go from glory to glory to glory. So you don't just transform and look, like this one day, right? Like for one day, for one specific moment in time, it's forever expanding. It's like the scripture that talks about how, the angels are forever saying, singing holy, holy, holy. I truly believe it's because, the divine is showing us, a different part of its majesty, right?
Yes.
And so the same is true with us as individualized expressions of
Yes.
beauty, of love, of light, of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that word holy because it means set apart and different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All the angels have to do is just look at our world and
Yeah.
then see this absolutely pure being and go, you're different.
Yeah.
You are, you're not like
Yeah.
everything else. You are set
Yeah.
apart. You are different.
Yeah.
And just be able to keep saying that in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
I would just love for you to share any, come back around at any thoughts that you want to leave people with in terms of how important for them to listen to, or to them to kind of process through. We've covered a lot. We've covered a lot of ground here. But if there's just one, two things that you could really sit with after this conversation, I'd love for you to share them at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I can't share this enough, that when one human being heals, they heal a generation.
Yes.
And healing comes in increments. You don't know who is looking to you for guidance and permission to heal. So I said
Yes.
healing comes in increments, because there are things that there are times where you might feel completely whole in one area, and then feel completely, not whole in another, right? Um, and what is truly important is that we take personal responsibility in the thought, in the mindset that says, this is an uncomfortable feeling. This is darkness. I
Yes.
have the tools. I have the tools
Yes.
to come in to complete light. And if you do not feel like you have the tools, I know that I felt that way on many occasions. That's why there's individuals such as myself, such as you, Sarah, with everything that you do to benefit the world, to just the show and Reiki and your teaching and your books, right? Like, and same on my end, with counseling, spiritual counseling, the devotional books. I actually have two, that we can look into together, and access the healing to move, because essentially what we're doing is we're replacing one dominant energy with one that is more serving for you. And so my message today would be to completely embrace the fact that the divine, God, Papa, Mother, um, would like for you to know that healing is your divine right. And that
Yes.
because it's your divine right, there is a version of you that is waiting for you to absolutely lift out of the pain that causes the unconsciousness. And so today, what I want you to hear, if you hear anything today, it's that you have got this. You have completely got this. And what does that mean? It just means that you can put one foot in front of the other and decide that you're going to have somebody hold your hand. You're going to have somebody hold you up. You're going to have the gusto to say, I'm going to pull on this person's coattails, and they're going to help me. It's the audacity to search for truth, and it's the audacity to want and desire change, because again, when you heal, you become a healing balm for others.
Oh, Herlay, that is so incredibly shared, so incredibly put. And I'm going to quickly put your Instagram back up one more time so people can see that if they're interested in getting a hold of you. I just
Yeah.
thank you so, so much for coming and joining and sharing and just being on all of us. I know that my day has expanded because of my time with you.
Mm.
And so with that, we're going to wrap up this particular episode of Simply Sarah. We are so excited that you are here. And I just encourage you to share this with anybody that you know who could use Herlay's love and light and encouragement.